had to be seeing all this happen. Did you know when you were doing the 2023 season, or have any clue that was going to be a transition year and the All Stars were going to be given to high limit and all this stuff? Did you have any clue?
No, no clue. Not at first. So we started out the season. We were doing our thing. High limit season started with that 12 race thing. Honestly, I thought that was awesome. I mean,
right.
I thought it was great. I mean, those guys were racing for big money on a Wednesday night or Tuesday night or whatever, and it was great. Thursday night,
with the Outlaw schedule, it was perfect. The Outlaws didn't even have to show up and pay for it. They was just going to get.
Hell yeah.
I mean, what's the problem here?
Yeah, no, I mean, we used to hop in the command center and be heading to our next All-Star race, and on the way there, we watched the high limit race in the truck on our phone. I mean, it was great. I mean, absolutely wonderful. So no, I didn't have a clue. Probably, let me see, probably Speed Week time or so with the All-Stars. Started hearing rumblings. Couple crew guys come and ask, what the deal is, if we had heard anything, and at that point, nothing. I didn't hear a word.
Was there any All-Star officiating assistants with the high limit events at all? Anybody?
No,
okay.
No. Nope, nothing. Nope.
Okay.
Hell, I even went to one of the high limit races. And offered to help. Just because we didn't have anything that said we couldn't. So we didn't have a contract.
We're both Flow Series supported, Flow
Yeah, exactly.
Supported,
Yep. So yeah, it was a Lernerville race where I went out there and Tommy was running the deal and I went to Tommy, and of course there was only
Tommy Estes Jr.
There was only 2 or 3, officials. Per se, and I went to Tommy and I'm like, hey, if you need help, buddy, I'm here. Like, I'll be more than willing to do whatever you need. And he's like, we're good. And so no, there was no indication whatsoever. We started hearing rumblings around Speed Week, or so, and I questioned Jared, and Jared was like, nope, nothing going on. And we got all the way to, let me see, the 4th round. So now we're looking.
Well, because I know that there was a pretty interesting meeting at Knoxville that year trying to figure out, let these outlaw guys off the leash kind of deal, or we're going to be pissed type thing.
Right. Yep, which I had heard about. I wasn't part of that, didn't know anything about it. You know how it is. You've been to Knoxville. I mean, if something's going on, usually it circulates through the pit area within a day or two.
Yeah, I was here. I thought it was a big mistake. I think that's when they, caused this to happen, but continue.
Yeah. So yeah, we get to 4th round weekend, and everybody is on me. I mean, like, everybody's wanting to know what's going on, and it got to the point, where it was like, all right, I gotta I gotta figure out what's happening here, because even my officials at that point were nervous. I mean, nobody knew what was going on. There was all these rumors flying around, and it's like, all right. So it was so funny. The Outlaws ran there, I think, on Friday night, and then we would run on Saturday night.
Right.
So after the Outlaw race, I went down to the pit area, and I'd never spoken to Brad. I walked right up to him, and he was standing there, and I'm like, hey, are you buying us? And he's like, well, that's the intent. And I'm like, okay. He's like, but nothing's done yet. Like, that's just the intent. And I'm like, okay. So the next day, I get on the phone with Jared Frood. I'm like, all right, listen, I got to address this, because, like, everybody's in a panic. My officials are losing their minds. I got race team after race team coming to me wanting to know what's going on. And Jared sent me a text to read at the drivers' meeting and to my officials, and it said at that point there was no intent, whatever, the paperwork. There was no paperwork. There was no offers. There was no anything. So it was business as usual at that time, and you continue on. So that's what I told him at the drivers' meeting. I stood there at the drivers' meeting. I stood right beside Spridge, because he had to use that drivers' meeting, and I said, listen, everybody's talking about this, but nobody wants to talk about it, so we're going to talk about it. Like, this is what I got from Jared Frood today, and I spit out what he said, and I think it kind of made everybody. One of two things happened. It made my officials feel a little better, But I think everybody walked away from that drivers meeting with the on the wing sprint car side and thought that guy's full of shit. Because I think they really thought I was lying to them.
Lying to him
And
in
I
which
wasn't.
way? Like that you knew it was
Well,
being sold and you didn't want to say?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I swear to God, nothing at that point. There was nothing. Absolutely zero. So, we finished out our season. Nothing is going on. There's no talking whatsoever. We're in probably the beginning of October or so. Nothing's happening. And Ross Paulson and I started, and Blake Anderson, we started to work on a schedule for 2024. I was reaching out to racetracks. For the Florida events especially, the schedule always was to go to Sonoya and race before going to Volusia.
Yeah.
You're right, and that never worked. So I was actually on the phone with a lot of racetracks down south, and trying to because we weren't planning to go back to Sonoya. So I was trying to get on the hook with a racetrack or two, or run a 2-day event or whatever, something. Before we would go to Volusia. But I mean, I was working on the 2024 schedule. And, then one day I wasn't.
How did that day come about?
So Jared called me, and Jared was like, "Hey, so, you're my series director. I gotta tell you first, I'm going to reach out to all of our staff, but, there is a letter of intent here. An offer has been made. We're accepting the offer. It's in legals. We're going to be acquired by High Limit." And I was like, okay. So that's kind of how it was. I mean, it was, of course it was kind of a somber phone call, because not that there's a million people in the same situation as me, but I never made it anywhere with money. I always made it with confidence and determination. And I felt like, through my racing career, I did that. Then as an official, it wasn't even my goal to become an official. But once I became an official, and once I became part of the All-Stars, it's like, all right, I was already on the Sprint Car Council, so I was involved with that. And it was kind of my goal, like, okay, how far am I going to be able to take this, And series director deal went extremely well, and I was excited. I hadn't done a full season as series director yet, because when we went to Florida in 2023, there was no series director yet, and it was just one of those things where I wanted it to continue. I wanted to run the series, because I really felt like we had a great year in 2023.
Did anybody acknowledge that? Tony or anybody
Jared,
say you did a good job? Or
yeah, so that was interesting. That phone call that we had that day, Jared, of course I was pretty dejected, and Jared's like, "Hey, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. You did a great job. We've had this series now for 9 years. Every year there seems to be issues where people can't get things resolved. Whether they go and talk to the series director and they don't get the answer they want, or they're just pissed off about something. Every year Tony would get 5, 6, 7, 8, a dozen phone calls every season, and then of course Tony would have to step in and kind of calm the waters and make everybody happy. And he goes, just to let you know how good of a job you did. He said, "Do you know how many calls Tony got this year?" And I said, "Nah, no clue." And he goes, "0." And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "You did a great job. Seriously, you did an amazing job." And then, so, it made me feel good. Obviously, it made me feel good, but it wasn't changing the fact that my series was not going to be my series anymore.
Was this before or after a banquet? I guess.
This was before. Before.
How did the banquet go? This had to be interesting.
The banquet went good. The banquet, honestly, it was for a bunch of big, tough race car drivers. There was a lot of emotional people there. The All-Stars obviously have been around for a very long time. A ton of history there. We honored a bunch of past champions there. There were, I don't know how many, 300-400 people there. It was emotional. I mean, it was guys would get up on up to accept their stuff and tear up, and And it was honestly, it was a big thing. I mean, it was an emotional thing. And then, it's funny, Tyler Courtney got up there to accept his thing, and then my little speech to the crowd was after his, and Tyler got up there, and then he couldn't talk. I mean, he was that emotional. He basically just said thank you and walked off the stage. I mean, and then I followed him, which was really hard, and then Tony followed me. So I got emotional during my little speech, and I moved to the right of Tony. I'm standing off kind of the edge of the stage, and Tony went up and talked, and he did his whole thing. And at the end of the speech, he said, let me tell you something about this guy. And he pointed at me. He goes, if I would have known this guy 9 years ago, he would have been the only series director I ever would have had. Like, for coming into this new and all the pressure that's on it and not having the experience, he did an amazing job. Like, I'm so proud of him. He's like, I don't know what it takes to be a series director, but whatever it is, he's got it. And it was just something that, I mean, in front of a room of 3, 4, however many hundred people that were there, and people stood up and clapped, and it just felt good. I mean, I felt like that I had accomplished something, something honestly that I didn't really expect. And, just going in there in my first year as series director, if I could get through the races smooth without any issues, it was a win. But I feel like throughout the season, whenever there was something that needed addressed, I addressed it immediately. Whenever there was, a ruling question, whenever there was a jump starting question, when there was anything in question, I would go address it immediately. Like, it was very transparent. We were very, very transparent, and we had a great season. I mean, my staff, everybody I had under me, I mean, we had such a great time. So many good people worked for that deal. I mean, it was cool, but it was also coming to an end. And then, it's kind of a strange thing. We always had our all-star dinner as a family, as an all-star family. We always had our all-star dinner there, and we called it the Last Supper. We go to that at a restaurant, and we sit there and eat, and as soon as we left that, my wife and I go to the high limit, the introduction party or the whatever you wanted to call it, the first ever
or whatever.
Yeah, the launch. Yeah. We go to that. So that was really weird too, because you're with all these people that you'd spent the last, 2 seasons with and went through all this stuff with and basically lived with for, the last 2 years, and you leave there and you go over and into into this other room where it's somber to happy and everybody's excited and everybody's gleeful,